In this video, I want to talk about the secret hidden Rosharans on Scadrial during Mistborn Era 2. I've done a video before about some of the secret, what I think are secret kind of Scadrians in the palace, in the Kholinar Palace during the events of the Stormlight Archive. But in this video, I want to do kind of the inverse and talk about the Rosharans that may be influencing events in Scadrial during Mistborn Era 2. And this might be obvious, but this video will include spoilers for all of the Stormlight Archive up until the end of Wind and Truth, along with Mistborn up until Mistborn Era 2. So let's get into it. But first I want to talk about Wit. And Wit is not a Rosharan, but I think we need to talk about him up front for two reasons. One is that his relocation from Roshar to Scadrial at the end of Wind and Truth gives us an insight into the timelines for how the various events on these two planets are intersecting. And then two is I feel like Wit has helped Roshar so much that I almost consider him a de facto Rosharan at this point. So at the end of Wind and Truth, as I said, we see Wit basically regenerate on Scadrial after Retribution kind of like vaporizes him mid-sentence. And when Wit regenerates on Scadrial, basically the first thing that he does is, one, he pledges not to return to Roshar because of the time dilation caused by the merger of Odium and Honor into Retribution. And then two, takes up a job as a coachman to none other than House Ladrian, i.e. Wax. And as he does so, Wit decides that he will, instead of return to Roshar, he will help guide events on Scadrial. And then two, that he'll find Valor, who is a hidden shard, one of the 16 shards that we have yet to see materialize or make any moves in the Cosmere. And so this timeline puts us firmly about a third of the way through Mistborn Era 2. And that's around the time right when Wax starts to realize that there's more than just normal crime happening in Elendil or happening in Scadrial, basically. And right before Wax speaks to Harmony directly for the first time. So it's a pretty pivotal time for Wit to show up with the full knowledge of what just took place on Roshar by the end of Wind and Truth. And so through the rest of the way through Mistborn Era 2, we see Wit, or Hoid as he's known in Scadrial, do basically what he said he would, which is help guide events in Scadrial, specifically by helping Wax and Wayne. Masquerading, for example, masquerading as a beggar, he kind of clues Wax into this idea that there are medallions that exist that enable anyone to have ferochemical or elementic powers. He comforts Wayne, who I think is like the actual hero of Mistborn Era 2. And he mostly just like kind of protects Wax and like shows up when Wax needs him to transport him to various locations. And while we don't see Wit engage directly with Harmony over the course of what happens on Mistborn, I think by protecting Wax and Wayne, which are basically Harmony's chosen, Wax in particular is Harmony's chosen agent in Scadrial, he is essentially supporting Harmony's goals. By the way, we don't see Wit do the second part of what he pledges to do, which is to find Valor. And again, as I said, there are many theories, I think, of where Valor may be hidden. But at the bare minimum, the fact that we don't see Wit do this, at least on screen or on screen time in the book, suggests that to me that that Valor isn't on Scadrial. Okay, let's move on to some of the other hints of the other potential Rosharan characters operating on Scadrial during Mistborn Era 2. One is that in one of the Elendil broadsheets, someone places an ad asking, "Do your metal tools speak to you?" And if they do, they give an address for where you should come and bring your metal tools, and this talking metal, and there's an image of like a hammer speaking. And this is like kind of a random ad in a random newspaper, but I actually think that talking metal tools could be a reference to spren operating on Scadrial. And I think someone may be trying to determine if there are budding radiance, for example, on Scadrial, and using this ad as a way to kind of bring in people. There's a major development that you may have missed at the end of Wind and Truth, which is that by virtue of Retribution forming and Cultivation fleeing, spren are now able to travel off Roshar onto other planets. In fact, when Sigzil is preparing to travel off-world with the Areli, he meets 12124, a high spren, who explains that spren can leave now. Any of us can. There are some in the caravan, even some wind spren and other smallen ones. Cultivation fled, and it was her bond with honor and their agreement with Odium that had locked us here being on Roshar. So the spren potentially are possibly some of the people that are traveling off-world from Roshar to Scadrial, maybe influencing events on Scadrial. Third, speaking of the Areli caravan traveling off-world, I think it's possible that the off-world that the Areli travel to is Scadrial. The Areli, sorry, just as a reminder, are like this nomadic civilization that are basically hopping from planet to planet over thousands of years as part of what they term as the Long Trail. And their religion suggests that they need to keep undergoing this long trail until they reach the seventh land, at which point their god, that what they call the One, will be made manifest again. And so at the end of Wind and Truth, we see the Areli traveling off Roshar to reach the fifth land, which I think could be Scadrial. That's in addition to the fact that I think they appear to be traveling with spren that may be showing up on Scadrial. Another potential point of evidence that suggests that it was Scadrial that they traveled to was that in Mistborn, there's a reference to a group of people with golden hair living on the east side that are speculated to be some sort of a fairy creature, like implying that no one quite knows what to make of them. And the Areli are famously golden haired. In fact, Brandon takes pains to point out that they're not blonde, but they have golden metallic basically hair. And so that could be a reference to them, and the timing does make sense for them for Scadrial to be their fifth land. So I'm not quite sure what role they have played or are going to play in Scadrial, if any, but it's interesting to consider that they may be there now with at least some knowledge of what's happening on Roshar, kind of like Wit. Finally, there's a reference to Chowta. There's basically a reference to a street vendor selling a dish known as Chowta in Mistborn Era 2 that Wayne picks up over the course of the book. And chowda is a Rosharan dish. It's basically like meat wrapped in bread, probably like specifically from her dad's, but it seems like it's pretty common across Roshar. And so someone from Roshar seems to have brought chowda to Scadrial from Roshar. And I'm not sure who, but I think it could be anyone. I mean, it could be, frankly, it could be like the Areli, it could be Wit, it could be anyone, but there's someone out there who's decided to relocate from Roshar to Scadrial and take up as a street vendor. So tell me what you think. I had fun with this video. It was fun to pick out all of the little hints and clues that pointed to Roshar in Mistborn Era 2. And tell me if there's like a secret other Rosharan that I may have missed in the comments below, please. And if you like this kind of content, please like this video and please subscribe. I continue to post on a weekly basis on all things Cosmere. Thanks, everyone.